Hi there, this is Solitary Rowan from Solitary Rowan Films, and welcome to a very sad episode of In Memoriam. Not that any of the episodes of In Memoriam have been happy. It feels like the end of an era. We lost Nakadai Tatsuya on the 11th of November. I didn't even know because I'm not a big presence on social media. I didn't actually know that he died until the 13th. When I went on Facebook briefly, and it kind of floored me. Granted, he was 92, but he was a young 92 to say the least. Now my relationship with Nakadai has been complicated. I'll fully admit, obviously being a Kurosawa baby, watching Ran and Kagemusha, I always had the feeling of, on some level wishing it was Mifune, but obviously Kurosawa and Mifune had fallen out after Red Beard in '65. So I maybe never appreciated Nakadai and Ran and Kagemusha as much as I do now. Obviously Zenyu Jimbo. I didn't realise he's actually in Seven Samurai as one of the wandering samurai. He's uncredited, but he's in Seven Samurai. But as I said, because I was Kurosawa baby, Mifune has always been special to me. As has Takashi Shimura, of course. But because I've seen so much Nakadai now, I mean, I've got 39 of his films in the collection. I think it's fair to say Nakadai is the greatest Japanese actor of all time. I'm not just saying, I'm not being pedantic by Mifune was born in China, but I think Nakadai objectively is probably a better actor than Mifune. He could do it all, but even when he was playing scumbags, in Sword of Doom, he's playing a complete psychotic. His eyes are just full of fury and torment, but there's still something engaging about him. And then when you play in a character that you adore, you don't adore characters as much as you adore Nakadai. It's just sad getting older, and these legends die off. Obviously they'll live forever. It was tough when Max von Sydow went, because if you actually look at when Max von Sydow died compared to where the world was then and where the world is now, there's a direct correlation. Same with Leslie Nielsen. The world has become a lot more shit, in the true farting sense, since Leslie Nielsen went. Yeah, I feel kind of guilty about Nakadai, because as I said, I was a Kurosawa baby and Mifune was always number one. But again, when you look at the 39 films that I've got, as well as obviously all the other films made, I think it was 118 films he made. He was still making films in his 90s. Yeah, Nakadai is something else. You could make the argument that Nakadai is the greatest actor of all time. I think he's right up there with Von Sydow. Don't give me any Marlon Brando talk. Von Sydow and Nakadai are a different level of cat. Obviously one of the films that I do have is Ichikaya Kon's I'm a Cat with Nakadai, which shows off his comedic chops. Obviously The Human Condition, I mean, what a performance. Might be the greatest performance of all time. Playing a character who's flawed, he makes mistakes, he's not perfect. It's a film about how ideologies none of them really work to the extreme level. You know, he makes decisions that people die because of his decisions. He's not this glorified hero. But for a young actor, it was one of his first films. It's just one of the greatest performances of all time that never seems to get talked about, the same way Human Condition, you know, wasn't in the latest Sight and Sound, which is disgusting. Quite frankly, no Kobayashis were in the recent Sight and Sound, but we know that Sight and Sound list will be looked at in the years to come as somewhat of an oddity. No Shizlowski either. Another dead person. Yeah, I mean, Harakiri, Sword of Doom. We had a wonderful relationship with Hideo Gosha. You know, in the last few years I've got into Gosha, so I've seen a whole bunch of Nakadai. So you can, you know, I recently saw Fireflies of the North, which is a slightly more playful Gosha with a slightly more playful Nakadai, but when he means business, he means business. He worked with Naruse, sorry. He pretty much worked with most of the greats. I'm not sure he worked with Ozu. But you could argue, is Ozu a great? I'm not going to get into that. Yeah, I mean, when you leave behind a body of work like Nakadai, it's pretty astonishing. Yeah, you could make the argument he's the greatest actor of all time, and I don't think, well, obviously people would argue because that's what people do, but he's certainly right up there. And it's, you know, because he always had a great smile, those great eyes, that twinkle in his eye, even at an old age he still was a good looking guy, just pretty iconic. But unfortunately he's no longer with us, and again, you shouldn't be like that upset at a 92-year-old, but yeah, it feels like all the legends have kind of gone. Yeah, it's just a little bit upsetting. But again, you can watch them all day long in some great films, great performances, with great actors around them, and obviously great directors. So thanks very much for watching. This is a fairly poor attempt to talk about Nakadai after his death. I was trying to compose myself. Obviously it did happen a few days ago, but just one of the best, and it just feels that the world is a little bit emptier without him. But again, we have his eyes and his smile and his 3 little moles on his cheek for eternity. So thanks, Nakadai, for all your hard work. Death is indeed part of the human condition. There's no point committing harakiri over it. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell to Tatsuya Nakadai.